I'm good. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. I am very delighted to have another author with me today. The author is Paula Potts, and the book is Yesterday When I Was Crazy, A Sacred Contract with Healing. And I'm very excited to talk to Paula today because my personal mission is to work with suffering people and help them get out of their suffering. That's my goal in life, is to have less suffering on the earth. And everybody's an individual. Everybody has an individual situation. And Paula has gone through the ringer with her health and come out the other side a victorious person. So her book is a wonderful resource, litany of things to try. And we're going to start off with asking Paula to tell a little bit about her disease and her disability. And I want to thank her for being with me today. Thank you, Paula, for coming on.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. Let me say thank you before I speak about the book and all the other related things. When I met you at the Rahman Ali event, and I saw on your name tag regenerative wellness or regenerative health, I knew I was with a kindred spirit, and that has borne itself out. And your mission and my mission are well aligned.
Yes.
I say that my work is about helping people feel better, giving them something they can feel that can make them feel better. And so
Yes.
everybody worldwide, all kinds of resources are available for that mission. Yes.
And you have plumbed the depths, I must say, because
Yeah.
your book has got an exhaustive directory of modalities, therapies, intuitive, energetic healing methods.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating read. And I do want to say Paula is a poet. She also writes poetry, and her book is beautifully written. I called her up one time in the midst of reading it, and I said, Paula, your turns of phrases are just so gorgeous. They're like, they're like flowers in a bouquet. And that comes from somebody that likes to write, but I'm certainly not the poet you are. So your book tells the story of what I consider to be sort of a groundbreaking diagnosis, a diagnosis that had no name at the time that you contracted it. And therefore, you had symptoms of a disease that wasn't really known by the medical establishment. Consequently, the title of the book, Yesterday When I Was Crazy, because many of the professionals she sought help from thought she was imagining these problems.
All in my head.
It was all in her head. They told her there was nothing discernibly wrong with her. All the medical testing showed she was perfectly healthy, but yet she was very, very, very sick. So why don't you tell us about this mystical, magical, mysterious diagnosis and how it came to be in your life?
Well, it really was life changing. It completely changed my life forever. And what's so interesting retrospectively, as I was waiting for the interview, I thought about all the things that I didn't think about or know about, when it was happening. For example, when I said I was in pain in all these places in my body, nobody believed me, right? So it never occurred to me that people wouldn't believe me. And this was authority figures. So it completely changed my relationship to people in authority because doctors didn't believe me. My employer didn't believe me. And at the time, I had an outstanding reputation as a professional. Outstanding record. I mean, in the federal government, ahead of my game, and they still didn't believe me. So it was initially a great challenge to my integrity and my self-worth. So it kind of started there. And I went to the doctors, they came up with all these diagnoses that didn't fit, bursitis, etc. Rheumatoid arthritis. I'm trying to remember back, those years. And finally, I landed with one of the premier experts in what I did have. And that's how good God is, right? Speaking of spiritual journeys here, and it was a spiritual journey from the very beginning, because I was placed with this doctor, and he was at Howard University Hospital, where my primary care was, a Dr. Michael Reynolds. And he said to me, you have myofascial trigger point disorder, right? Well, nobody knew what that was either. And it just sounded like a bunch of gobbledygook. What is that? What is myofascial? What is a trigger point? What is a disorder? Back then, 25 plus years ago, Nobody believed in those things. And so
Mm.
they did not believe me. I got progressively worse
Mm.
because they didn't believe me. So it was complete fall from grace, because I went to work one day, and in my office, the air conditioning was blowing very intensely over my shoulder. And I started to have this pain in
Mm.
my neck and my shoulder. I didn't know, I didn't really realize it was being caused by that. I just know when I got home,
Mm.
the pain would erupt. I went back to work. It got worse. For 3 days, it got worse. And I went home. And to make a long story short, that kept happening because nobody believed me.
Mm.
And they accused me of using my brilliant mind to control, the situation, and to not have to work and to get out. I mean, just all kinds of demeaning things I was accused of in the
Mm.
process. So I got worse and worse and worse. And then I developed the emotional mental disorders, depression, dysthymia, dissociation, panic disorder.
Mm.
All of those layers of my soul and my psyche started to emerge as my fragmented self trying to cope with all of these physical insults, medical insults, and insults by people of authority, and even family and friends. That's went on for a very long time. So, year or so into that, now I have this pain everywhere. And I have a severe case of cold sensitivity.
Mm.
By the time I filed a case, and even that was serendipitous, when I filed a case for disability, and a friend of mine, knew the people in that personnel department and HR, and they said to me, you need to talk to her. She will tell you what to do, because this was happening to you shouldn't be happening, because it was constantly aggravated by the air conditioning in my office. But nobody believed that that could be harmful. What do you mean air conditioning would be harmful? You really are crazy, right? So I went to the authority figure. I told her what was happening. She said, you need to file a case. I was told that by them. I didn't come up with that, right?
Mm.
And I said, oh, okay, yeah. She said, you have a case for aggravation. Just put the paperwork in. We'll put it through. You'll be fine. That's not what happened. My case was rejected. It took me 2 years to win my case.
Mm.
At that time, I'm bedridden. And the doctors now say, you can't go back to work anyway. And from that bedridden place, I found the strength and the guidance, the divine guidance, to then land myself on a magnificent healing journey that only God could have manifested in my life. Because the things that I pursued, I'd never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
I trusted them because I trusted God. Fibromyalgia subsequently became the accepted name for what I was suffering.
Mm.
But nobody had it then. We're talking 25 years ago, right?
Right.
Nobody I knew had it. So again, even when I got the diagnosis, nobody believed me. Thought I was making it up. I was trying to get attention, and all the things they accuse, especially women in our society, get accused of, of being, incorrigible people when we don't get what we want, right?
Or hypochondria is mainly
Hypochondria.
lobbed at women,
Exactly. So yes, it was a complete downward spiral. I didn't recognize myself, I'd say about 3 years later, being bedridden. I'm a dancer, singer, very type A, very active, very high energy type person. And so to be bedridden was just
Right.
unbelievable for me.
Well, in reading your early story, you were a very high achiever in school and in the family and in church. You were always the star, really. And one of the things you mentioned is having a little bit of bullying happening because you were such a high achiever. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that some of the emotional traumas of the bullying as a school age girl could have played a role in setting you up for this cascading poor health?
Absolutely, positively,
Mhm.
because it was so pervasive. I'm an African-American woman who doesn't look like an African-American woman. Let's just start there. As a light-skinned Black woman in the Jim Crow South, first of all, I was just a minority within a minority, and I was much maligned and rejected by my own people.
Mhm.
And my father was a HBCU college president. So I lived in the big house with the servants and all the prestige that went along with that. Mother who's first lady, two brilliant people who did a lot of good in the world. But being the president's daughter was not a happy place for me.
Mhm.
I didn't understand why people didn't like me. You know, kids don't get it, right?
Mhm.
So I didn't understand why people were so mean to me. I didn't
Mhm.
understand why I was bullied every day at school. You know, my lunch money, my coat was flushed down the toilet. Basketball was thrown in my back and my hair was pulled. I mean, it was just a constant thing. And so I started having panic attacks in elementary school, quite
Mhm.
frankly, right?
Wow.
A form of panic, because yeah, I would
Wow.
faint. I would just fall out. I would just go down when my
Wow.
system just got too far. So, and I was an A student and number one in my class, all through elementary school,
Mm.
all through high school. So all of those things, which everybody else thought was so wonderful, for me as a child and a teenager growing up, were not wonderful.
Right, because there's competition and people, they don't
That's
like the egghead in the class, the one
right.
that's the teacher's pet. They get, they
Exactly.
get reviled for that. So you had it coming at you from all
All
sides.
sides. And of course, you don't realize it then. You know, I had a lot of stomach disorders.
Mhm.
I caught every virus, every cold, every flu that came along, earaches. Yeah,
Mm.
my immune system was, I guess, pretty bad as a kid, you know. But, you know, I had very wonderful parents. I had a lot of resources. Growing up on a college campus was just an ideal place to live, even though it wasn't the real world. So, you know, I had the kind of coaching because my family looked like me too. My family is highly accomplished. I'm fourth generation master's degree on my mother's side, you know, so it goes back generationally. And I was raised to respect and honor that,
Mhm.
carry that forward no matter what.
Yes.
So I think it's the no matter what.
Well, yes, you definitely had, um, your your life's career became overcoming your malady and the many manifestations of that, including the emotional.
Right,
Um,
well said.
yeah,
Well
in
said.
in your book, after you lay all this out about your background and what happened, the illness that befell you, you start the book really with this talk about a rebirthing experience. Do you want to tell people what that was about and what you learned from that rebirth that you had?
That's one of my favorite stories actually to tell. One of my favorite experiences to recount. So thank you for asking me about that. And I hadn't thought about it recently. But yes, as a student of craniosacral therapy, you know, I landed myself in the study and practice of energy medicine as my journey continued. And I'll say about that in a minute. But in that place, when I was studying craniosacral therapy, we were going through a protocol that had to do with the third ventricle in the brain. All right. And my partner, we would have partners in these sessions. And my partner was someone I'd never worked with before, but she was the mother energy of the class. She had like 8 to 10 children or something. And then she just had this mothering thing that was phenomenal. She worked with mothers and babies and whatever. So she was my partner in this exchange. And in that exchange, the result of it was that I literally felt myself coming through the birth canal. I know this is hard for people, a little woo-woo, hard for people to imagine. And wasn't a woo-woo girl before any of this. So this just was gifted to me. I believe it's a gift. And so I saw myself coming through this bright light, coming through the birth canal. And when I came, it was like I'd seen the face of God. And God had given me permission to be reborn anew and to start this healing process that would change my life forever.
Mm.
And at the end of that session, when I went home, it was totally illuminated, but I remembered as if it were yesterday. And it was just like whoosh, coming through the birth canal. And I was a happy, happy baby coming through that birth canal. And I wasn't born that way, right? So this was a rebirth because in a rebirthing I experienced about the way I was actually born, I was born angry. I didn't want to be born. I didn't want to come out. I didn't want to come into the world. It's like I knew what I would be facing. So I also tell the story in the book about being born angry, which I also learned in a rebirthing experience. But this rebirthing experience that you brought up is the one that was really probably my first God is bigger experience, but I didn't know it then. You know, my primary spiritual theme is God is bigger. Anything you can ask for, God can give you a better version of it. So just wait, right? And it'll come as long as you have the right heart and the right spirit about it, right? So I went home that day and I went out to walk my dog, and my eyes, my vision had corrected, was sharper. I could see things I'd never seen before. The pain,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it was phenomenal because I I put my glasses and I was going between glasses and contact lenses and something just wasn't right, right? And I was like, well, what's wrong with my eyes? First, I thought something was wrong. And then I'm walking down the steps and it turns out my vision was maximally improved. I couldn't believe it. Because fibromyalgia and all the medicines they give you leads to fiber fog. You know, the Ativan I was taking gave me blurred vision. So I was dealing
Mm,
with side effects of pharmaceuticals that were actually having adverse effects. And so,
mm.
right. So this was remarkable, right? Not only that, as I was walking the dog, I noticed that I felt more flexibility in my muscles and in my tissues, and that my fascia seemed to be releasing. And so I had a complete washing, if you will, or a resourcing of my fascial system in that rebirthing period. So I was significantly healed by that one session.
And
And
it
it
does seem,
my life forever.
like a miracle healing.
Was a miracle healing to me
Yeah.
because, yeah, really, like I said, I've always been pretty a strict intellectual. You know, I have a master's degree in educational research, so I'm a scientist by training, right?
Mhm.
You know, so I do investigate things, you know, according to the scientific method, you know, et cetera. But I've learned to relax and allow my intuitive abilities and my muscle testing abilities to assist me in this healing journey, because you can't research everything all the time, you know, and body wisdom is available to us. It's something that we take for granted, but there's a way to use your body wisdom and your body knowledge to improve your life, to make decisions, to heal yourself. It's a phenomenal place to live. And so I learned to live in that place of body wisdom and the natural intelligence that the body mind has. And these experiences just threw me into that space in a very dynamic way. I didn't talk about it. I knew people would, again, criticize me for the stories I tell, even about rebirthing and my healing journey. It bothered me then. Now I speak and let it fall where it may.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you're a dancer, and I know one of the therapies that was greatly impactful was a dance
Oh,
type of therapy.
I
So
get
let's talk about that.
I
Because
get chills just remembering that. Yes, my first thing I ever did. I'm a singer dancer. I have been most of my life, actress, spent most of my early life on the stage. First thing I ever did in life, I was in my first dance recital at the age of 4. So, so it goes on even before singing. So, and I injured myself in my 30s, and my doctor, and then I gained a lot of weight. And my doctor said, maybe you should try dancing, right? You love to dance. I was always taking dance classes. My daughter was a dancer. I was her first dance teacher. And so
Oh.
we grew up together as dancers, right? Well, I'd take her to a dance class and then I'd go to a dance class across the hall. That way I didn't have to leave and come back, right? I could just stay and dance and then we could go home together, right? So the first time my doctor said that, okay, I'll try that. And it worked. So this time around, the doctor said the same thing. He was, well, you know, why don't you try dance? And at the time, my dance teacher in Washington had passed away, and I was going to her funeral. Her daughter, who was there, whom I knew, who was also a dancer, said to me, Paula, I have the perfect dance modality for you. It's called synergy dance. Here's the information. You call Charmaine Lee. That's what you need to do. She sent me to synergy dance, which is a healing form of dance.
Mm.
It's created by a woman, a South African refugee, who had
And
an
nobody's
incredible,
ever heard of this.
right, exact synergy dance. I wish it had really been able to be published in a way that people can benefit. That's one of my regrets of this whole journey that I've been on, because there's nothing like it out there, nothing. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to go to this class. Now, mind you, when I got to that class, I couldn't even stand up. I was
Really?
sitting up against the wall watching, right? I could
Oh,
do the floor work, but I couldn't stand up. 3 years later, not only could I stand up, I could dance across the room,
oh,
and I could attend class 3 times a week.
oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was phenomenal. But what was even more phenomenal was that energy medicine was included in the dance form. So I was learning energy medicine through my body, through dance. She then said to me, the teacher, Charmaine Lee, I love her for my life, right? That I should study the work. She said, you need to do this work. I did a body work session with her on her table at her home. And she was working on me, and I dissociated right on her table. And this is a true story. And she said, you're in really bad shape. And I think I can help you. But this is what you need to do. And I believed her. By the grace of God, I believed her. So and she told me who the teacher, she even introduced me to my teacher. She said, and I have the perfect teacher for you. His name is Roger Gilchrist. I took the next class. The rest is history. So I say my healing process started in a dance class, and that's the truth. And I will be a dancer until I can't.
So you still dance every week?
I'm a person who likes to work out, who likes to exercise. So I do various forms of exercise and movement. Yeah, all the time. And I would say for a moment to anybody suffering from fibromyalgia or muscular disorders that movement is key. You can't lay down when you have chronic muscular pain. And movement doesn't have to be big. We think we have to do all this vociferous stuff. One of the most powerful forms of movement therapy that I engaged was something called Feldenkrais. I don't know if I talk about it a lot in the book, but I'm sure I mentioned it. And Feldenkrais was about little tiny movements, just little tiny movements that you begin to perceive that allow you to actually move the body from the inside out in small measures of movement. Especially good for people who cannot do the big movements and can actually lead to that. So, movement is key, and that has been with me this whole time. Yeah. So right now I'm working on an exciting new dance project with my daughter. So it looks like I'll be dancing again for the next couple of months.
Oh, that's exciting. So of the different healing methods that you implemented in this journey, which other ones do you think had a good impact? Because I know you've talked about several here, but
Right.
were there others?
People who know me well know that my number one thing is breath work. Breath work, breathing exercises of a variety of types has been one of my other saviors. And I would say breath work and body work, because energy body work is phenomenal. And I was able to marry another form of body work called myofascial trigger point therapy, right? There are very few of them around. I was able to marry that with the energy body work and the breath work for 10 years. I was in full-time therapy every day for 10 years. Imagine that. 2 to 4 times a week. I had a full-time therapist who came to my treatment room and gave me bodywork sessions. At the same time, I'm learning energy medicine and about to go there. So the combination of the breath work and the body work, exceptional. And I guess third on my list would be supplements. I tried different kinds of supplements. Again, I had to get off all the medications. At one time, I was about to OD on pharmaceuticals, and the Spirit of the Lord was like, okay, you need to stop that, right? You need to get that out of your system. So I detoxed all my medications except one, and that took the same 10 years.
Mm,
In that process, I learned how to use supplemental substances and technologies as well. You know, at one time, B12 deficiency, so I did sublingual B12. It didn't have to go into my belly because I had digestive disorders. You
mhm,
know, so I learned, of course, diet. Now we know about diet and water, right? I changed my diet also,
mhm.
you know, which we all need to do probably at some level. But yeah, it was a consistent breath work and body work. And the fact that I just kept making progress. But I had to retrain every muscle in my body almost. That's why it took so long. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had nothing else to do. I was a full-time patient for 10 years.
Wow. And you know, what's interesting about breath work playing such a role is that even for people that aren't sick, I think many of us are guilty of too shallow breathing. And
Absolutely.
I notice I have you know, jaw clenching is what I do when I'm stressed or, you know, a hectic day. I tend to get a lot of tension here. And the only thing that really helps me is to concentrate on breathing really super deep and
Oh,
exhaling really super deep. And it helps me relax that jaw because I do not need this tension here. It's
oh
not
my
good
gosh,
for me.
no. Because it ricochets,
Mm-hmm.
because joints are, you know, everything is connected.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a tension here, you probably have tension somewhere else. You can't perceive it because the beautiful thing about the human design, which is also confusing, is that you can't feel all the pain that's going on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that when I was doing all of that body work and work with Dr. Reynolds. Every time I'd get through one layer of pain, there was another layer. And we get through another one layer of pain, there was another layer and another layer
Wow.
and another layer. I thought it would never end.
Wow.
And I feel like it's never ended. But so yeah, breath work, it's just Dr. Weil says breath work is the master key to self-healing.
Wow. That's
Master
powerful.
yeah, that's right. So I do it every day. I have all kind of breathing protocols that I use it. You
That's
know,
that's That's awesome. And what I love about the book is that you do direct the reader to these different organizations, these different therapies, where they can go for it. It's sort of woven into the narrative. And I do feel like you've left a path for others to follow,
thank
and
you.
that the book could be very valuable to anybody struggling with a chronic illness that, you know, maybe is something that maybe they weren't as fortunate as you. They haven't been able to find these brilliant doctors that really know their stuff. And doctors have probably told many people, there's nothing I can do for you.
Exactly.
And those are the kind of people I hope will find their way to your book. So I thank you for sharing all this with them today. But I want to talk about your life today because you have been through the valley of the shadow and you've come out the other side into the sunshine. And I understand that you have a health practice of your own, that you actually physically are helping people with some of these therapies that have helped you, and that you also have started an exciting new business with your daughter.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about those two things?
Yes, I am a credentialed NMG medicine practitioner. I'm a registered cranial psychotherapist and a board certified polarity practitioner. And I'm also certified in heart math as a heart math practitioner. So, and I've been that for 20 years. I have a practice in my home. Yes. And I see clients in the physical and I do some Zoom clients as well. So, yeah.
And
And
you're
it is
based in Washington, D.C.
And I'm
Just
based in Washington, D.C., right? And it is the foundation. It's what holds the form for me, the practice. Because the wonderful thing about energy work is it's a two-way thing. When you give it, you receive it.
mhm,
So when I come out here and I get grounded and centered and get into the breath of life energy, into that deep stillness, that's good for me. So
mhm.
it keeps me retooled, the practice. So it's a wonderful two-way street.
So
Pretty
your
much.
patients are healing you while you're healing them. That's
Right.
beautiful. Mo-
Exactly.
Most professionals would like to say that they get that sort of
Right. Wouldn't that
symbiosis.
be nice? Yeah.
Yes, it's
And the other thing
beautiful.
about it is the requirement that we have to be still and to be grounded and to be centered and non-judgmental and open-hearted. I mean, a lot goes in. People don't understand or are not aware of what goes into having that kind of practice and what you have to be in order to serve in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be angry and work on a client. Okay. So,
Yes,
you
and I
know,
want to, before we talk about the business with your daughter, I want to bring up your spiritual faith, because throughout the book, sort of a through line is your belief and your faith in God. And that's something that is also a practice that you have.
absolutely.
Sunday
Absolutely.
worship, singing in the choir,
Oh
doing
my God.
ministry work.
Yes. Yes. That is just my heart and soul, and I'm so grateful. In addition to the many talents my mother had, she was also the church organist and a musician, pianist,
Oh,
just an amazing person, and my first voice teacher. So I grew up singing in church,
mm.
and church was where I felt safe, Kimberly. Believe it or not.
No bullying in church.
There's no bullying in church. And because I was in the Episcopal church, it was quiet and still.
Yes.
It was quiet and still. So I loved going there and I loved singing. I wasn't all that much of a Jesus girl just then, I'm a youngster. But I knew that something else happened when I went there, something else that was deep and abiding and that I needed. And so I pretty much carried that with me. During all my down times, I also play the piano. I would play and sing, and that would ameliorate the depression.
Mm-hmm.
I could make myself feel better with the music and the singing that I had done all of my life. And then recently, the church I'm a member of the St. George's Episcopal Church here in DC, and I've been singing in that choir for almost 40 years.
Wow.
And that was
That's
my healing.
commitment.
Yeah, it's been my healing place. I was singing there when I couldn't stand up. I was singing there when I had on layers of leather and hats and gloves because I had to be warm. I was
Mm.
singing there when I had a heater to keep me warm and
And
needed a
this is fascinating. You talking about this. Here you are in a cold shoulder top. You
right.
probably could have never worn that before your healing
No,
journey.
not anywhere.
So that's a fashion testament to
Exactly.
your healing.
You're very intuitive, very observant.
Oh, well, the first time I was suggested a cold shoulder top, I said, oh, I could never wear that. And now I have several of them. I went to
Uh-huh.
a little fashion studio where a gal was suggesting things, and I was like, oh, I could never do that.
I
But
know.
it's a really wonderful thing that you've accomplished, just physically being able
Oh,
to be comfortable wearing that.
exactly.
Um, so tell us about your fashion business with your daughter, because that's to me very exciting. I love fashion. So.
Oh, wow. Thank you for asking. Yes, my daughter and I have a jewelry company, which is called Silverware, Sylverwear. And Silver is my daughter's name. She is an international recording artist, executive music producer, and all kinds of other wonderful things. And so it's what Silver wears. So that's where the name came from. And she's an international celebrity. So her celebrity status was a good marketing tool for this jewelry. But it started out, again, as a part of my healing process. For
Mm.
7 years, it was a hobby because I could get out of bed. I gave away rather to family, my dining room table and chairs, and I set up little stations in my living room where I could go downstairs when I could get out of bed for a couple of hours a day, and I would play with beads and make jewelry items, having no idea that I would sell them, but it was therapeutic. It was a
Mhm.
reason to get out of bed. It allowed me to retain my flexibility and agility in my fingers and hands and in my body. And for 7 years, and then people started noticing it when we would wear it and asking where they could get it.
Isn't that marvelous?
Right. So then my daughter and I, did a little pilot. Again, I'm a researcher by training. We did a little pilot test. We sent a bunch of our friends and family all kinds of jewelry samples. One Christmas, they all loved it. And then we decided to go ahead and keep doing that because it was so therapeutic for me. And the only other thing I was doing at the time was going to choir rehearsal.
Hmm.
And I literally had no career, no job, anything. Right. So it kept growing and growing and growing. And then I started designing jewelry for silver's wardrobe for her stage wardrobe. Then all of the people with whom she performed wanted to know, where are you getting this jewelry? And
Ah,
yeah, so we have Elton John and Shaka Khan and all kind, Nancy Wilson and all kind of famous people wearing the jewelry. And that sort of catapulted us to the next level. But she and I hand make everything right here in the house, because of the nature of my challenges, I do everything from home base.
mhm.
And it's been almost 30 years. And we have a new website that is just amazing. We have a couple of new collections that just our first serious collection since the pandemic. We put up recently. So
And we'll put the URL in the show notes so everybody, what she's wearing today, those earrings and that necklace are part of the collection. And I'm sitting here wishing I was wearing it, so it is very attractive jewelry. Before too
I
long,
love
I'm
doing
sure I'll
it.
be a customer of your jewelry line. I'm sure I will.
Yeah. All are welcome. We have
Um,
men, women, young people. We have something for everybody.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And what a marvelous story, an overcoming story that we've heard today. But as some of our viewers are aware, I'm in a light therapy business. I promote a therapy that helps people heal. And as a result of our friendship, Paula has been using this therapy. And I just asked her if she would be willing to say a few words about her thoughts on it as a health practitioner and also as somebody that may have received a few benefits from the therapy. So
Indeed, I am honored and privileged to actually, just to start by saying, we bonded talking about light therapy, right?
yes.
When I came over and introduced myself and you said light therapy, I said, oh, light therapy, that's something I resonate with. So right away, we bonded on the power of light therapy. And I had known it as a light box that one of my therapists actually built some time back. And so we experimented with various forms of light therapy. So I was aware of it. And because I'm into the gentle, non-invasive, and what I also think of as intelligent therapies, we
Mhm.
know that there's some other intelligence within the system.
Yes.
When I'll use essential oils as an example, it's a live energy that comes with the essential oils that are really powerful. It's live energy.
Mhm.
So with the light therapy, I look at it as that kind, as a gentle, non-invasive, supported resourcing. With the patching, it goes one step further because I think the delivery system for the patching is one of the better things that's available now. I'm a much believer in things that don't have to go through the digestive tract. That's kind of what works for me best, right? If I don't have to take everything through the digestive tract. So the fact that I'm able to use that in an external way that's powerful internally
Mhm.
is perfect for me. I noticed immediately that I had a response to patching, to the light therapy, to the stem cell therapy. I could feel it, because of my years of practicing energy medicine, I'm able to notice and observe a lot of what goes on in my bloodstream and in the way my body moves and fascia and all that. And so right away, I could feel the energy of the patch going to those places where I have the greatest challenge. And that's always a way for me. It's always a good indicator. I call it spiritual muscle testing. It's really just muscle testing, but I have my own form of muscle testing and I apply it to everything I put in my body, everything I put on my body. And when the body wisdom says yes, and I have a process for that, then I know it's for me. The body wisdom said yes. I could feel the effects. And now, several months later, I think it's 3 or 4 months later, I also along the way began to notice much more clarity in my core energy field.
Mhm.
I'm someone who, in the shower, listens to my chakras every day, right? I go in, I listen, I brush, and I see what's happening in my core. Oh my gosh, it's just been a remarkable change in the energy. that now is flowing through my midline and my core, which is my central nervous system. So I know that there's a calming effect. I know that there's a pain relief effect. It's a very deep and powerful effect. And I think it's a case of the intelligence of the delivery system and the intention of the delivery system marrying to the intelligence of the body wisdom and having a synergistic response. And that's where you get 1 + 1 is 3.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And you can notice it.
Yes.
You can feel it. You know.
And just yet another thing that God brought to you along your path in life to take your health to that next level. So thank you very much for your insight and wisdom on that. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was really excellent. Well, Paula, I've really enjoyed this. I hope the people that watch this will reach out to you and maybe follow you. Are you on social media at all? Do you have a Facebook page or?
Yeah, the Feel Better Challenge is my professional Facebook page and my professional Instagram page.
And so that challenge is something anybody can take?
Well, the Feel Better Challenge is actually a self-care system that I manifested through the same way. In 2015, I asked God for help on something I was working on. I came out here to my treatment room and got my pens and paper, and I just wrote it all down. And it's the Feel Better Challenge. It's a self-care system that I designed, and it's on my website. You can learn more about the Feel Better Challenge on my website. It's now there.
Okay.
And, so it's a self-care system that deals with breathing, grounding, visualizing, listening to your heart, and letting go, shaking it off. And so I teach this to clients and people who want to feel better.
Well, thank you for passing it on. What is that? Paying it forward?
Yes.
When you got your healing, now you're paying it forward. And I just want to show everybody the beautiful book, the beautiful cover of her book. And it's so coincidental. We both wore yellow today, and I didn't have any consciousness of the fact that I was going to be matching the book cover when I put this outfit on. And then when she showed up and she's in yellow too, I'm like,
alignment. There it is. We're in alignment, Kimberly.
We really are. That's crazy. Now, that is crazy. The day when we were crazy.
Exactly right. And now I'm not even mad about crazy. I honor my crazy.
Well, you know what? Just like with somebody as a savant, people think they're a little different, a little odd, but they've got this incredible intelligence.
Exactly.
That, your intelligence about health and healing was born out of this tragedy of having this horrible situation. Right. And I'm very grateful that God gave you the confidence and the strength to persevere and to grab every bit of life you could back, because you were such a shining star, and now you're shining again. Absolutely. And lighting up other people's lives. So that's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly, for, bringing my book back, to the forefront, and for inviting me for this interview, and for being a wonderful resource. I want to tell the people who are listening, you need to talk to her, right? She's got some good information and some good resources. And I know that's why God brought us together. And while we're here to serve your public and both of our missions on this planet.
Thank you. Well, the best thing about networking is that you do meet you make a lot of connections, and you never know when one of your connections can help somebody else. Right. And I'm all about sharing who I know to address issues that people have, or just decisions they need to make, or changes they need to make in their life. With the right resources, we can make those changes and those issues painless. We can make
it true. Life could be life was meant to be effortless. Polarity therapy, we have the concept of effortless effort. I write about that in the book. And and it's just a shame that we stress out and go through as much as we do, when if we just knew a little bit more about the human design and how we're made up and how we function and how the world affects us, then we would be better equipped. We could learn ways to be in the world and be able to cope with stress and all the chaos around us. It is possible.
And you are living proof.
I'm a living witness.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you. And we'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Much love. God is bigger.